Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're going to be going over the Flamethrower, Driller's first primary weapon and probably one of the most straightforward weapons in the game. It also has probably the most straightforward overclocks in the game too. So we're going to be going over all the overclocks, we're going to be going over a build for each of them, and a secondary to take with them that kind of complements them to make a more general build. Something that may make up the lack of range that we might have with the Flamethrower, or something that just pairs really well with it. So let's go over the basic pros and cons of the Flamethrower now. The pros of the Flamethrower are that it does good damage, it's very good at crowd control, it's usually pretty ammo efficient as well, you don't run through ammo with it too fast. Fire is really good in most situations where you can kill robots extremely fast with fire. You can also kill crowds of enemies really quick. Downsides to the Flamethrower, at least the main downside, is that it's not very good against dreadnoughts in most situations because you can't light them on fire. So you lose out on a huge chunk of damage just for that. The other downside would be that it's kind of basic, so if you don't like that and you don't like basic overclocks, you may not like the Flamethrower as much as the other Driller primary weapons. And I guess the third, and just like all the Driller primary weapons, it's not the greatest at very long range. There are some Driller primaries, at least with certain overclocks, that can kind of alleviate this, but the Flamethrower is generally best used at close to medium range, with maybe one overclock being an exception for longer ranges. So let's go over our very first overclock for the Flamethrower. This is an unstable one. This is Sticky Fuel. Sticky Fuel makes it so that our sticky flames do more damage as well as they last a lot longer. However, we lose out on tank size and maximum ammo. The way that I usually like to build sticky flames is like this. So we're going with larger tank size in tier 1. This is to make up for the lack of ammo that we get from just the sticky fuel existing. You could go with reach though too. That's not bad. In tier 2, I'm going with longer flame duration. This one just really helps for building up the flames on enemies and just having the flames linger there for quite a while. This way you get 11 seconds of sticky flame duration. In tiers 3 and 4, I usually go with ammo here. That's to make up the lack of ammo that we got from just taking this overclock so we can go back up to normal. However, the slowdown in tier 3 is pretty strong for this one too, as well as the longer duration can also be fairly strong in tier 4. You could take all of them if you really wanted to and have something like a 14-second sticky flame that slows down all enemies. That can be a pretty fun option, but you can potentially run through ammo quickly. It's also not really the best against flying enemies. This overclock just isn't really the best for that. And then in tier 5, I'm going with Heat Radiance. This will let us burn everything around us, so we can just light more things on fire. Targets Explode is really not good for this particular overclock, and I would recommend Heat Radiance, because Targets Explode only triggers on enemies dying to the direct flame, not to the sticky flame. So even though it sounds like it would be really cool to have sticky flames and the bugs just run across and they explode, which it absolutely would, it doesn't really work that way. This overclock in particular can be really good at crowd control and pretty good at single target damage. I decided to pair this with the Wave Cooker and took it with Blistering Necrosis. This is to stack up even more damage and to give me a little bit of effective range against things like web and acid spitters. For our second overclock, we have Compact Feed Valves. This is a balanced overclock that gives us larger tank size, more fuel, but it does make it so our reload time is slightly longer, not very much so, and our reach is not quite as far. We have 8 meters of reach rather than 10 meters of reach like we usually do. That's not such a huge deal, and the way I usually like running it is like this, but this one is an extremely flexible overclock that you can build basically however you would like. In tier 1, I'm going to larger tank size, so we have 100 tank size. This makes it so you can deal with just about any size of crowd fairly easy. In tier 2, I'm going with sticky duration again, but any of them in tier 2 are really good. Pick whichever one you'd like. Direct damage is really good for just killing things quicker, and the heat buildup is really good if you're going on like a robot mission. In tier 3, I'm going with extra ammo. This is just so that we have more ammo, but any of them in tier 3 are fine. Going with the Fear in tier 4, this one can be really fun because the Flamethrower does have a very high chance of fearing enemies once you have this on it, and them having to run back and forth through your flames can stack your damage up quite a bit. Then in tier 5, we're going with Heat Radiance, although you could take Targets Explode. I just like Heat Radiance a little bit better for the crowd control that it gives. Since this one is super flexible and you can kind of build it however you would like, you can kind of take whatever secondary you want. I decided to take Persistent Plasma on the EPC. This way we can slow down enemies even more. We can use it for mining. You could use it for fire if you wanted to. There's quite a few different ways you could build Persistent Plasma because it's also an extremely flexible overclock. So any of those ways work, and it does do well on basically every type of mission. Besides maybe dreadnoughts. For our third overclock, we have our other balanced overclock. This is Fuel Stream Diffuser. This gives us 5 more effective reach with our Flamethrower. However, we do have a slower flow rate, so we have less DPS coming out, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for the Flamethrower. The way I have it built is like this. So in tier 1, I'm going with extra reach. This is super fun because it gives you a 20 meter flame reach, and this one you can actually reach the ceiling in a lot of caves, so even if there's web and acid spitters, it's not too hard to put the flamethrower on top of them. Or you could always use this for turrets on the ceiling too, which it's really strong for. This is probably your best overclock for just killing turrets with driller. In tier 2 we're going with the heat buildup. This is to build the heat up even faster so we can light things on fire quicker. This works against grunts pretty well, as well as it works extremely well against robots because it's really easy to keep our fire just on them while they fly around, or if they're on the ceiling, we can just burn them until they explode. In tier 3, I'm going with extra ammo. Tier 4, I'm also going with extra ammo. These ones you can kind of pick whatever you'd like in them. I just like the extra fuel because I'm probably going to be using this mostly at longer ranges, and just trying to spray this into crowds and to particular targets at those longer ranges. And then in tier 5 I got heat radiance. This is just to burn things if they get close to me and I'm not paying attention to anything around me. You could go with targets explode here though too. That's also pretty good, especially against crowds since it's so easy to put the fire onto a large crowd from such a long distance. And I decided to pair this with explosive reload on the Sabata. This is just really high single target damage since this flamethrower does do less damage per second than some of the other flamethrower overclocks. I wanted to kind of pair it with something that could let me have really high burst damage. So explosive reload fits that bill really, really well. For our 4th overclock, we have face melter. This one is the other unstable overclock, and this one's super fun. This one greatly increases your direct damage, and it also greatly increases your flow rate, so you get more damage per second. However, we lose out on tank size, and we lose out on 3 meters of reach, so we go from 10 meters to 7. So in tier 1, you can go with either one of these in tier 1. They're both pretty good. Usually I go with the larger tank size, so we go from the 45 tank size, I believe, to the 60 tank size. Maybe it's 35 to 60. I find that a little bit more useful than the reach, although reach isn't bad either. This would take you from 7 to 12 meters, so you have slightly longer reach than the standard flamethrower, but you will have a smaller tank size then. Tier 2, I go with just damage on this one. I like this one the best for it, because we already have high damage with this. We just want to have more damage so we can just get right up into something's face and just melt it with the face melter. It's also probably the best overclock for using on Dreadnought missions if you just don't want to get rid of your flamethrower. In tiers 3 and 4, once again, I am running extra fuel. I find it really useful on this overclock because you can run through fuel a little bit quick with this, although it is also pretty fun to run fear in tier 4. That can keep you safe. So you can use that so that enemies aren't right on top of you. And I am taking targets explode at tier 5 because targets explode is really fun with this overclock. It will also give you a little bit more crowd control once you're right up next to enemies, because you do have to get quite close to enemies. You could take heat radiance with this one though too. Heat radiance is also a really good option for this overclock. Since we have such short reach with face melter, you could take a secondary that complements that so you can have something at longer range. I decided to not entirely do that. I took automatic fire for the Sabata. This gives us basically a little submachine gun, and it pairs really well with the volatile bullets that you can put on the Sabata. So we can get more damage when things are on fire, and this will help us have at least out to medium range to enemies. This build will struggle at longer ranges, so if you find that you're constantly having trouble with menaces, spitballers, acid spitters, web spitters, anything like that, you may want to switch this out for something else. Maybe heavy hitter for the EPC, explosive reload for the Sabata, maybe just oversized magazine for the Sabata. All those would be great options too. For our 5th overclock, we have lighter tanks, which is probably the most basic overclock in the game besides maybe Pack Rat. This gives you 75 more max fuel. This gives you effectively a free tier 3 or a free tier 4. You could also stack them on top of one another and just have a bunch of fuel, but this overclock, like a lot of clean overclocks, can be built however you'd like. I have it set up like this: larger tank size, extra direct damage, more slowdown, more ammo, and then heat radiance. But realistically, anything would really work with this. If you want to go with longer reach, you could. If you want to go with sticky flames, you can. If you want to just stack a bunch of ammo, you can also do that. All of them work pretty well with this particular overclock. Like I said, it is probably tied for the most basic overclock in the game. It's good, but not exciting to really talk about. I did decide to pair this with something that has a little bit longer reach with heavy hitter as our secondary weapon, so we can use that for picking off things at a distance. This is also built for fire, so we can light things on fire at a distance, and we can light things on fire up close with the flamethrower. This should work on just about any type of build that you want to take it on. And then for our 6th and final overclock, we have sticky additive. This is the other clean overclock for the flamethrower, which is also incredibly basic. This gives you 1 more damage. This is direct damage, and it also gives you 1 more second of sticky flame duration. Both of these are nice. They're both bonuses to the flamethrower, and you can build this however you'd like. This does lean a little bit more to a sticky flame build, but if you didn't want to take that, you could build it however you'd like. I have it built like this, so increased tank size, increased duration, more ammo, fear, and then heat radiance. Again, if you wanted to build this all sticky flames, you can. If you didn't want to build it sticky flames and you just wanted more direct flamethrower, you could build that too. And then you just have a little bit more damage and a little bit more flame duration. I decided to pair this with gamma contamination for the wave cooker. This will let me at least put radiation on enemies at a distance. And I believe I had this set with boiler array too, so I could clear up smaller things like jellyfish at a distance, primarily because the flamethrower will take care of any sort of smaller enemies, whether that be grunts or swarmers. It burns them all the same. So this was the flamethrower and all of its overclocks and some builds for them. They are all fairly interchangeable. The flamethrower probably has the most basic and consistent overclocks, which kind of fits its weapon profile where it is very straightforward. It is just hold the fire on something until it dies, or let them run through the fire and they'll die that way too. Every overclock kind of benefits one of those two strategies, with maybe the exception of Fuel Stream Diffuser, where you can light things on fire at a distance. Tell me your favorite flamethrower overclocks and builds down in the comments below. I would love to hear them. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.